Good evening and welcome to this public hearing of the Standing Committee on Social Development. Thank you for joining us today and for having us in your community. My name is George Nearsu. I am the MLA for the Mackenzie Delta and Deputy Chair of this Standing Committee. At this time, I will ask committee members to introduce themselves, starting on my far left.
Committee members, just introduce yourself.
Oh, Cheryl Yakalai, I'm the member for the Dutcho. Thank you.
I'm Kieran Testart. I'm the member for Range Lake in Yellowknife.
My name is, good evening. My name is Danny McNeely, and I'm the MLA for the Satu region.
Good evening. I'm Shauna Morgan. I'm the MLA for Yellowknife North, and happy to be here in Hay River. Oh.
Okay, thank you. We are here as part of a review of Bill 34 Trespass to Property Act. Bill 34 received second reading in the Legislative Assembly on October 13, 2025. Bill 34 proposes to address gaps in trespassing law by creating a new law intended to govern trespass to private properties, to schools, and to certain types of private interest on public lands such as leases. This committee has been tasked with reviewing the bill to see if it needs any changes, if it has any issues we can resolve, and if it is ready to continue on its path to becoming a law. That is our role in this process. We did not write the bill, but we are in charge with taking a very close look at it and making sure this bill represents the wants and needs of residents as best we can. Before we start, I want to remind everyone that this is a public meeting. That means that any comments the committee hears today is considered public information and could be included in our final report in the Legislative Assembly. For that reason, we will be passing around microphones to record feedback we hear tonight. Please also, there's a sign-in sheet at the back. If you haven't signed in already, please do so. For anyone not familiar with presenting to committee, please direct all comments through me as chair, and please state your name before sharing your comments for the record. At this time, I would now like to open the floor to those who would like to provide feedback on the bill. Please just indicate to us if you would like to speak, and we will pass the microphone to you. Thank you.
Maybe I'll say too much. I learned that from Ben's anyway, so. Okay, a couple of things. There's usually a precedent for this. Why do you need this Trespassing Act? Are you getting it from the South or what? Where's the example coming from? Because I don't have a problem here with trespassers. I just found the RCMP. I only have two questions, not my first one. Should I say the second question and you can answer them both? Okay. The way that I look at it, we have a whole bunch of homeless people, and, well, I can't walk myself. I can't walk around that much now. I'm sick. But, I mean, it's going to be difficult, even for me. I have a couple of degrees to know what's trespassing and what's, you know. I take a shortcut in somebody's yard or something, you know, I didn't even know it's a yard because there's no fences. So then if the powers that be that picking up on somebody, and then they might say, "Oh, you trespass," and then they will. I'm talking conspiracy theory here, just another little law that you can push on somebody you don't like, and so I better go back to my question number 2, like. I'd rather see you guys push harder to house the homeless than this. Don't make sense to me. Maybe it does if I look up my degrees. But as a First Nations person, when are you going to give the First Nations the clean water? And of course, that's in the south. But when are you going to give them housing? There's different kinds of houses. Different kinds of. I was a in residential school. Why don't you give that kind of a what you call? Because right now we have a shelter and it's helping people. Just a place where you put a whole bunch of decent, not cots, but something better than cots for people to sleep in, and maybe at levels. I heard they did that in Medicine Hat. Which is like, first, you get all the people that are on drugs, and then at a different level, they go into a group home, and finally, blah, blah, blah. Okay, I said lots.
Excuse me, can you just give us your name before anything?
I'm Dora Anka. I was born in Rush River, so I am from this land. I'm from America. I'm not an immigrant. Thank you very much. And this is all Vince's. He put me up to this.
Okay, thank you. Just just a reminder that committee will take your questions into consideration for the final report. We may not answer your questions directly, but this is just to get feedback for the final report to be process. If anybody else likes to speak, there's a microphone going around.
I can comment to Doris.
Mr. Testart will just comment on Dora's questions he'd like to respond.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you very much, Dora, for very colorfully explaining your concerns with the bill and your questions around that. Again, as the chair said, this isn't our legislation. We didn't write it, but it's our job to review it. And many of us do support the legislation. And the reason why is because there's no kind of middle ground in the legislation for trespassing. So when the RCMP gets a charge of trespass or a complaint of trespassing, they can either do nothing or move to a full criminal charge under the criminal code. And that takes a lot more evidence and time and process to actually convict someone under that act of trespassing. And the RCMP has a lot to do. They have to pursue drug dealers, gangs, and all the other things they have to do combating the epidemic of organized crime we have in the Northwest Territories. So we would rather see that these trespassing issues are dealt with its own legislation. And there is examples of these kind of acts in the South, not so much in the North. So this is very much breaking ground on what Northern jurisdictions are doing with legislation like this. And it requires that there is signage or notice given to people. So it's not kind of a Wild West where you're walking through town and someone says, "Hey, you're trespassing, you're under arrest." So there are limitations to what's allowed. But if you are the landowner or the leasee, or you have legal right to manage and maintain and control the property, then you can say no one can trespass on that property. But when it comes to Indigenous rights, as with all of our pieces of legislation, Indigenous rights always prevail over anything that the GNWT passes as law. So if there's any time a conflict would come with a treaty right and something in the Trespass Act, the treaty right would take precedence. And and we know that's so important when it comes to Indigenous rights respecting land. and land use, and especially traditional land use for hunting and traditional purposes. So we would never want to pass, nor could we pass legislation that contravenes that. So you can rest assured that Indigenous rights are well protected. And, this is going to work differently in different places. So in smaller communities, we'll have a different impact than a larger community like my community of Yellowknife. But having the RCMP have more tools in their tool belt to address concerns is very important. And if we're talking about like drugs, for example, if you have a drug dealer who's trespassing on private property, well, now there's a way to deal with that doesn't require a lengthy criminal investigation. So that's the idea that we want to do. We want to empower communities to protect themselves, to keep their streets safe. And this is one of the tools to do that. And there's a few gaps in the legislation. Maybe I'll just kick off one of my concerns that I wanted to ask you guys. Right now, the act is limited to only the RCMP enforcing it. We've got a bylaw officer here. We have some, I'm not sure if Hay River does this, but in Yellowknife, we have private security as well. What are your thoughts on allowing other types of peace officers to enforce the Trespass Act, or private security to enforce the Trespass Act? Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Testart. Is there any other comments in regards to Bill 34, the Trespass Act? Just state your name and your question, comments. Thank you.
My name is Brandon Scott. In regards to Mr. Testart's comment there about, the bill being, it specifically states RCMP. And I know as a municipal enforcement officer here in the town of Hay River, I do receive a lot of complaints about unwanted behaviors that happen on people's properties, in front of businesses, apartment buildings, you name it. And, we do have our public behavior bylaw here, which was put in place to help curb some of these behaviors. But I do think it would be wise to maybe consider adding the verbiage in there about, peace officer, as that way it would give us another tool in our toolbox to help address some of these behaviors. I can speak from firsthand experience that I've run into situations myself where, say, our public behavior bylaw didn't quite fit the offense that was happening there, so you really are left with no tools to address the issue. And I mean, let's face it, our RCMP are doing an excellent job around here, but they're working really hard. They've got a lot of things on their plate that I think that municipal enforcement officers and peace officers specifically could be working hand in hand with these issues. So that's just my 2 cents on the issue.
Thank you, Mr. Scott, for your comments. Any other comments on Bill 34?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Terry Rowe. Just a couple of comments, I guess, and I just briefly reviewed this, so maybe I don't have all the details, but loitering isn't defined, as a quick review, isn't defined in here, or maybe even part of this, so I guess maybe a bit more information can be included if loitering is going to be a part of this act, because that is, as a business owner, probably one of the bigger things that we actually deal with. Second would be, how does this act, or how might this act relate to the Residential Rentals and Residential Tenancy Act? The act is pretty clearly defined in people that have leases, but there's some that don't have leases, and sometimes that becomes a pretty big issue in terms of trespassing or squatting rights and different things like that. So more definition of how this act may be related or tied into the residential rentals, or people being on a property claiming that it's theirs when it may not be, or they may not have a right to be in that property. So I'd be looking for more information on both those items. Thanks.
Thank you. Can't really go through this.
Good evening, Mr. Chair. My name is John Stanga. I want to say I'm absolutely for this act. There definitely needs to be more teeth in it, in my mind. My only concern is when you start talking about private security possibly doing it. Someone like Brandon, a bylaw officer, a municipal officer doing it. In my mind, private security at a mall or something, them having the authority to charge out of this scares me, because it can go from anything from I honestly trust Brandon. I trust the members. But somebody private security who's hired for $19 an hour, we don't know their level of training. We don't know what they're going to do. And in my mind, that's where the cutoff should be.
Thank you, Mr. Senga. Very important little topic or of discussion there on who can enforce these acts, and that's something that will be taken into consideration as the as the report becomes finalized. Thank you. Any other further comments in regards? Ms. Morgan?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to ask a follow-up question because there was mention of wanting to have bylaw officers have the power to enforce this act. And so I guess my question is, are we talking about the power to arrest? Because that's the main sort of enforcement provision in this act. Do you think bylaw officers should be physically arresting someone? And if not, what do you envision really the role of bylaw being in this? Currently, currently the act doesn't allow for just sort of giving of tickets, and we may recommend, for example, that be one option. But currently, the act is enforced by like arresting someone, by getting the RCMP to arrest someone. So I wonder if you have any thoughts on in that sort of scenario, what would be the role of bylaw to enforce the act? Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Morgan. Mr. Scott?
I think that a way that we could possibly look at giving municipal enforcement officers, a role in this would be to add in like a fine schedule, or the ability to issue summonses to be able to bring people before a magistrate. I mean, I know that's already a thing in some of the legislation that enforcement officers are already able to enforce. So I think that would be a wise way. Like, obviously, if a person is non-compliant or combative, the only option a municipal enforcement officer has is to phone the RCMP. So that is addressed in the legislation. But I think given that option to be able to deal with it administratively with a fine, or bring them before a magistrate to make that ruling, I think would make a lot of sense. Just my 2 cents on the matter. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's Vince McKay, I'm the MLA for Hay River South. Thanks for having committee come here. It's awesome to see you guys here and come to present to Hay River. Just those comments, I guess, just kind of triggered me because there's something I've been dealing with in a couple of our legislation in regards to roles and responsibility of certain people and what they can and cannot do. And one of the things that I've often seen in some of the legislation is designated authority or authorized personnel, those kind of terms. And I'll use the example is we tend to have a lot of evictions happening in Hay River right now, and those cannot be done without the sheriff's office. And unfortunately, we used to have a position in Hay River, which I'm still fighting for to get back, but all the sheriff's positions are currently in Yellowknife. So we have to wait till the sheriffs are no longer on vacation, no longer on sick leave, available in the office to come to Hay River to authorize or do those evictions for those evictions in Hay River, for an example. So those alone, state sheriff, they don't say RCMP. So this could be one similar where you could use a dual purpose of saying, like a peace officer that's authorized to do this type of work or that kind of thing, so that we're not specifically stuck with the one term of like RCMP, right? Because there might be tribal police in a community, there might be other kind of law enforcement in different communities. So not being stuck with just that one term. And something that we've been running into in Hay River is that term sheriff. So we have to wait for the sheriff to come to Hay River to do the evictions. So thanks.
Thank you, Mr. McKay. Any other comments or questions?
My name is John Dahl, Hay River since 2003. I got a lot of questions, but I'll just try and boil it down here. If there was something really successful that we were doing in the Northwest Territories to address these problems, I'd have a lot more faith in anything new. I'd be all for if there was a really successful program that we had that we could hold up and go, look what we're doing here. But I don't see that. So short of that, I see this just as another way of cycling money. And I'm not saying the bylaw officer isn't doing a good job, but what good is it going to be to give a $10,000 fine to a homeless guy? Where are we going with that? You know, the paperwork is going to cost more than you're ever going to get out of the fella. Now, I'd be all for doing something helpful. Give them some. I've got ideas about going in the woods and getting all the dried wood and throwing it in a chipper and heating our homes with chipped woods instead of paying somebody to put it out in the summertime. Burn it and use it to heat our homes, that kind of thing. And we could put some people to work doing that. But I'm sorry, and this UNDRIP, was that on anybody's ballot when you guys ran for office? Did somebody say, yeah, we're going to do this UNDRIP thing? This is a unique area, the Northwest Territories. These guys from New York are going to come in here and tell us how to run it? I mean, I didn't get through high school, but good luck.
Thank you very much for your comments. Duly noted. Any other comments or questions?
My name is Ian Myers. I'm wondering how many of the this Trespass Act applies to people that have obviously issues with alcohol and drugs, and if this is the biggest cause of it, wouldn't be better off to put resources towards doing something to solve that problem? I mean, if there wasn't so much addiction, we wouldn't be worrying about people trespassing on each other's property. People would have more common sense and, respect each other a little more. The drugs are taking over. It's just, I've been here for 20 years, and I see a big change in it since I've been here. We don't seem to be like, there's certain places, cops are raiding it, raid, and back in business the next day. Why? You guys make laws. Why are these people, destroying the community? They don't contribute anything when these drug dealers come in and bring this product in. There's only one way it can come in, a highway. So I don't know. I think we're putting the cart before the horse. It's like we're filling a tire full of air and we still got a hole in it. That's just my opinion. I don't know. I think if we don't spend the money wisely, then we're just spending it for nothing. And if we don't deal with these issues, like, what's the next law going to be? Like, we can come up with all the laws we want, but we already have enough laws to deal with these issues now. Like, I don't know. That's why we vote you people in. I mean, unless you're going to start, getting sheriffs and posses together and going like the Wild West. I don't know if we want to get to that point, but, people, I think the biggest thing is people are getting tired of, just the dangers of what's coming into our communities. And it's not just Hay River or Yellowknife, it's all these communities, so that's just my opinion. I don't know.
Okay. Thank you. We've often recognized that trend where alcohol and drugs is the problem, and we've been trying to address the issue and where and how we can fight alcohol and drug addictions. We've been talking about it in different committees, bringing it up in our member statement, but it is a true fact that we are putting the Trespass Act before we're in dealing with the alcohol and drug issue in our communities. I come from a small community, and all these issues that's happening within the bigger centers, regional centers, even Yellowknife, is happening in my communities too. So, the Indigenous leaders, local leaders are trying to address it, but they also need the help of the GNWT in combating. You're right, we should be addressing this alcohol and drug issue before we even start with the Trespass Act, because if we can beat the alcohol and drug issue, then maybe we wouldn't need this Trespass Act, because I know past years that we, in my community, didn't have to lock the door at one time. But now you can't even leave your yard without being scared that somebody will come onto your property. Is there any other questions?
My name is Penny Pokiak, and I am. What? It's not a. Anyways, my name is Penny Pokiak. I'm a business owner here in this town. I have lived here for most of my life. I like this idea. I'm going to say that I agree with wanting to put more teeth to it. I'm all about accountability, and that's what I think we need to do, is to hold people who break the law accountable. And trespassing is pretty big in this community right now, and we can say it's related to addiction, but I don't really care about that. I want to be able to protect what we work so hard for, and I want people fighting for that, because without the businesses here in this town, like, what would happen? So there's few of us, and we do a lot to support the community, and we stick it through, even though the same people keep coming and trying to break down our doors and steal stuff from us, and there's really no recourse. We talked about giving a fine to a homeless person. How are they going to pay it? Well, you know what? Those people get their cows and plows, and that should automatically go to pay their fines. Like, there should be avenues to deal with that and to collect the money, but it all has to kind of be encompassing in this bill of how you would do those things. And the government needs to stop enabling the residents of the Northwest Territories to be those people that are breaking the law, and we're still going to pay to house and clothe you and feed you. Meanwhile, the working class just keeps having to work and smile and wave. So accountability is big, and I like the fact that this could give both residential owners and business owners more options for dealing with people that are trespassing on their property.
Thank you, Penny. Yeah, it's been noted by people from the Mackenzie Delta that I've often talked to. They state that the more you do, the less you get from this government. The less you do, the more you get from this government. So it's something that I've been trying to advocate on as a member, regular member, that, we have to have these people accountable, make them be working members of society. Is there anybody else? Go ahead, Dora.
Sometimes I can't hear that well. I don't know if but I have a teacher voice anyways. And by the way, I am absolutely disgusted with people who talk about cows and plows, and it's none of their business. Those are treaty rights, and I hear it on Facebook all of the time. That little bit of money that we get, that you get in 2-3 months, because we couldn't get a job because of racism? Come on. This is not a place to talk about cows and plows with a bunch of white people here. It's none of your business. Excuse me. I'm still talking.
Excuse me.
And I agree with that gentleman who was talking about a waste of money. Okay? And I was told that if I had another, concern, I could bring it up, but I'll be very, very quick. Our MLA Vincent, I think he was talking about a concern about the people wanting more MLAs. Well, it's kind of like what the other gentleman said, you know, come on, we need to spend our money properly, okay? And you people that were talking, you hit it on the nail as far as I'm concerned, you know, and I said the same thing. Take care of the homeless, and I at least gave what you call solutions that probably nobody really cared to hear, but anyways, it has to start someplace. But in terms of MLAs, that's a bunch of wasted money as far as I'm concerned. We're a population of 50,000. In the South, you get one MLA. So no, we don't need more MLAs, okay? There's too much in Yellowknife as it is. Come on, let's get rid of a couple in Yellowknife. Let's put that money to work where it's really needed, okay? I know there's a lot of stuff that worked in the old day. Like, I mean, if somebody's around my place when I was staying all by myself, I just said, well, I learned how to swear, so I just used the F word and just said, get the out of here. And I'm calling the cops, and they showed up right away.
Thank you, Dora. Just a friendly reminder that you direct your questions, comments to the chair rather than anybody in the room. It's just, and we're discussing Bill 34, the Trespass Act, and try to keep on topic. Go ahead, just state your name.
Hi, I'm Kathy McGuire, resident of Hay River. I think maybe 3 years I've been here, I think, anyway. Anyway, I'm very happy to be here. And we both work, and I feel that the majority of this is really good. It needs to be in place. Oh, sorry. It needs to be in place. We need something like this. We want to protect our property, and I find that when you are leaving Hay River for whatever reason, obviously you're not in your dwelling, so you need to have somebody keep an eye on your place for safety's sake. And at the end of the day, I think it's going to be a really good outcome of this being put in place. It's going to help everybody because we all pay insurance to have our homes safe, our vehicles and everything, and go to work and, you know, be lucky to have a job here. But the thing is that, you know, we do have to care for each other. It's not that we don't care for others, but we have to take care of ourselves as well so we can continue to have a good way of life. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. McGuire. We're receiving comments from different agencies and audiences, and all these concerns are somewhat identical to each region, each community throughout the NWT. So just let you know that, again, that we will be taking your questions, comments into consideration for a final report. Is any other comments, questions? Ms. Morgan?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. A couple people have mentioned that they would like the act to have more teeth. And I'm wondering if people can explain more about what you mean by that. Like, do you mean higher fines or more jail time, or just to have more specifics about sort of the process? I guess I'm just wondering if you had any more ideas on that would be helpful for us. And I'm also wondering if people can comment on, so currently, like if you see someone that is trespassing and maybe causing trouble, like, are you calling the RCMP? What is happening currently? Are they coming? Are they not coming? Like, what's not working about the current situation that you think this act could change? I would love to just have more details or sort of examples. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Morgan. Any other comments?
Yeah, hello. Thanks, Mr. Chair. Just to your comments there, I can't speak too much about the teeth, but I guess it's been commented a couple times, whether it's peace officer bylaw or a sheriff in town. More people doing the job might help and might give it more teeth. So making that a little bit, that definition of who can do it might help. I wouldn't say increasing fines is going to help. To the comment earlier about a potential homeless person not being able to spend $10,000 on this. So it's really kind of doesn't really matter that much. But I would say if more people were able to enforce this, it would probably have a little bit more teeth. And then more just a story about why I think this is important and why I brought up loitering earlier, which I guess this is similar. Trespassing and loitering, I think, probably go hand in hand. But when I first started the job that I'm in property management. There's obviously a lot of loitering going on in some of our properties. I would call the bylaw at that time that public behavior was not a thing. I think it just came out only a few years ago. So there was no bylaw for it. I called the RCMP. The officer said, RCMP said, were they doing anything illegal? Were they drinking? I said, no, but they're in a space that they're not supposed to be in. So they did not attend to that. And that happened quite a bit. And it wasn't until just about 2 years ago where the public behavior bylaw came in, which is great. It's helped, but that's one person. And at times there was no bylaw as well. So, and they don't have the same training or means as an RCMP officer. So I would agree we have lots of issues in this town, and I don't think that this stops any of us from dealing with those other issues. But right now, loitering, trespassing, you drive downtown right now and there's probably 6 or 7 broken windows in commercial buildings. I'm not blaming that all on loitering or trespassing, but it does play a big part. Substance abuse plays a big part in that. I think this helps a lot. I would like to include loitering in there, but I think trespassing is probably defines kind of the similar way. And I think in terms of more teeth, more people being able to enforce it, and even just smaller fines, like something that, again, because what's $10,000 going to do? But really just something that says, hey, the person can't be there. Even I think what is it when you're not allowed to go somewhere, like go back to somewhere, like I can't know the word right now, but pardon me? Yeah, like you're banned from somewhere if you continue to do it, right? So that might be other options that we can do and potentially add to this act. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Testart.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And look, I think this is a great discussion. And one of the reasons we wanted to come here is to hear from a community that we know is really hard hit by public safety issues, by drugs, by gangs, by these issues. We see it in the news no matter where we are in the Northwest Territories, but we don't live it. So hearing your experiences really is an eye-opener to me and means a lot. I was a sheriff for 5 years, and I worked with the sheriff at Hay River at the time, and I flew circuit around the territories, and I saw firsthand how difficult it can be to deal with these issues in communities, especially when they don't have access to the resources. So it is something that is high on my mind, that if we're going to tackle these issues, we do have to address the root problems, the addictions, the drugs, the mental health, the residential schools, intergenerational trauma. But while we're addressing those things, we also need to make sure communities are safe. So we need a two-pronged approach, and that's what this represents and other legislation that's coming forward. On the loitering thing, because I know you brought it up, loitering is basically like if loitering is when it becomes trespassing. So, you might see someone walk through your yard and say, well, I wish they wouldn't do that, but whatever. But if someone's standing in your yard and not leaving, well, now you call the RCMP or bylaw. Now it's loitering. So that's how the act is contemplated. So it's not missed. And that's how loitering works in other jurisdictions that have trespass acts. And as for occupier, someone brought that up, like who actually owns things. If you look in your bills, there's a definition in section 1 that will say, an occupier is, I don't have the actual text because it's on another tab, but there we go. So it's the third definition, occupier. So what that means in plain English is an occupier is a person who's in physical possession of the premises, such as as a person who has responsibility for and control over the condition of the premises, its activities that are carried out there, or control over persons allowed to enter the premises. So that last one is like a security guard, control over what happens there. That could be a municipal facility, and someone who controls the condition of the presence could be a landlord if it's like an apartment building, or the owner is a house. And it's also defined as a land, water, structures, ships, vessels, trailers, other portable structures, trains, railway cars, vehicles, and aircraft, except while in operation. And it clarifies, this act clarifies that owner as defined in the lands, what's the LTA, Sophie? Land Titles Act. The Land Titles Act is the occupier as defined in Bill 34. So if you had land title over something, then you're disqualified. So that's what an occupier is. That's what loitering is. So I just didn't want to lose the thread on that. And look, I completely agree with the concerns that, this government is struggling to kind of achieve results in a lot of areas. I'm very concerned about that as well. But just because we're proposing trespassing legislation doesn't mean we're also taking away from addictions or not doing something with addictions. I think we need a treatment center. It's something that many of us push for. It's something I think we absolutely need, but we don't have one. But we are continuing to see money going to support Indigenous healing organizations, going to support out of territory treatment centers. If you need help, you can call and make arrangements and get to those places in ways that I think other provinces don't and territories provide that support. When evac happened, there were lots of people in the streets in Calgary and Edmonton who came back here, who moved to the Northwest Territories because they were told you get so much support there. It's a great place to be, and it's way easier to live here than in these big cities. So we have been doing a lot, I think, as a government over the years because we've been trying to tackle that root cause. But what we've forgotten about is public safety is equally important. And missing these pieces of legislation, if you talk to the RCMP, they'll tell you these are gaps that the RCMP has available in other places that they don't have available here. And this is the first gap we're plugging. And in the coming session, hopefully we'll see more legislation. One of them is civil forfeiture. Right now, if you take stuff away from a drug dealer, like their money, their guns, their cars, if they're found not guilty, you give them all right back. Right? That's because we don't have laws on the books that allow those to be taken away. So that's the kind of stuff we need to address. And just because we're addressing it doesn't mean we're taking money and resources away from addictions and treatment for homelessness programs. Those are all well flowing. So I wanted to reassure people that's not the focus of this committee, certainly. This committee's focus is on public safety, but also on addictions, also on treatment options. The topic today just happens to be the Trespass Act. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Testart. Mr. McNeely?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was basically going to say what my colleague, Mr. Testart, had said here. This legislation is just one of many that the overall umbrella is trying to look at and give powers where the gaps are missing to our enforcement officers so that they can go and do their job and not having to rely on seeking a search warrant, for example. So the other pieces of legislation are all part of this, as Mr. Testard mentioned. You have the Trespass Act and you got the Civil Forfeiture Act. Those are all helping our law enforcement have more powers in their jurisdiction of where they're working. So So I'm really happy, personally, I'm really happy for this legislation. It improves and upgrades and gives the ability to the RCMP to do their jobs, or the enforcement officers, and I'm glad Brandon is here to expand on that. There's other peace officers. We don't want to burn out our RCMP officers. And, my hometown is in Fort Good Hope, and I have not seen that community so bad compared to 40 years ago. The things that are going on today, it's just driven by this addiction of drugs. And I'll be open and honest with you, there is prostitution going on in this little community, in my home community of 650 people. It's very bad. It's out of control, actually. So if we can control it by upgrading our laws, by all means, you got my support. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McNeely. Any other comments, questions?
I just have a question about the fines and the up to $10,000 in fines, up to 6 months in jail. And I don't know enough about the legal system, having been on the good side of it for years. Is it possible that either you put a line in, or a judge could say, again, a homeless person, here's a $1,000 fine. He doesn't have the money, but you get 100 hours community work. Is that something that would be done by the court or by the legislation? And I just don't know enough. That's why I'm asking, right? I mean, he's right. There's no sense giving a big fine to someone who's on social assistance and is living in a shelter, right? It's just my thoughts.
Yeah, it's something this committee will look at in its final report and take your comments into consideration to seeing who will enforce these fines and/or jail terms and these different circumstances that surround them. So,
And if they can change it, or if it's stuck in the legislation, is my concern, right?
yeah, just Mr. Testard will comment on that.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And just to be clear, that's the maximum fine, right? So that's the max range.
That's why I read it before I spoke.
Yeah. So it's not like every time you trespass, you get $10,000 fine or 5 years in jail. And when courts will look at aggravating factors around that. So it's like if you've repeatedly trespassed at the same site, if you were asked to leave and you persisted, those are all aggravating factors that might result in a more severe punishment. And then if there's and then fine options programs exist. They're not in this legislation, but they don't need to be for them to work. They exist elsewhere and they're administered through the courts. Likely, like most of these offenses would end up before territorial court. It wouldn't be as high as the Supreme Court or anything like that. And there are a lot of fine options programs that are administered through organizations like the John Howard Society that allow people to work off their fines instead of serving jail time. So those comments that get people back to work and learning skills, those might be options that you could find. Someone cleaning up garbage, someone chopping wood for elders. There's a lot of different options that are available through that, and our justice system is very much focused on rehabilitation and in the Northwest Territories in particular, and our judiciary is very focused on that aspect. So you don't see huge jail sentences in the Northwest Territories typically. The priority often is keeping people in the north to serve their time, so they don't have to go to southern correctional facilities, and looking at fine option programs. And of course, issues related to intergenerational trauma and Indigenous factors. You might hear of something called GLADU factors. Those are always in place in our decisions that are made as well. So a lot of that stuff is in place. It does look like a heavy hammer when you see it on its own, but you can't, and it's tricky with bills too, because you're not looking at the entire criminal justice system. You're just looking at one little piece. But those are the maximum ranges, and all those other things are available to folks as well if they are on the wrong side of the legislation.
Thank you, Mr. Testard. Mr. McKay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was just going to add a comment to that and just add on to what Mr. Testard said, because that's what I was going to touch on a little bit. But my past experience working corrections and calculating sentences and stuff like that, you can sometimes waive in these fines. So if they have a big collection of fines from all over the place, they can waive them in to add more time to their sentence, and they're able to waive off those fines that way. And if a judge sees that sometimes that this individual builds up these fines and never pays them off or works them off, the judge can pull that into their sentencing and just sometimes wipe out those fines and throw that into their sentence, and just a full two-sided calculation to that. So the fines may not be paid cash-wise, but it is a deterrent and may add more time to their sentence. So,
thank you, Mr. McKay.
John Dahl again. Related to that, I was curious, a rough estimate on the annual cost of having a person incarcerated in the Northwest Territories. I know that might not be a straightforward question, but it's a good one. I'd also like to have an opinion about this addiction. Everybody's talking about addiction. And we're talking about drug suppliers. They're the problem. The drug suppliers are the problem. And I put it forward, and nobody ever has a good argument for me, that the problem is the demand that we put for drugs and alcohol and to get high and whatever might happen to be. If we didn't have that need, the drug suppliers could come to town with free drugs. They'd have nothing to do. So I don't see, like I said before, if somebody could hold up and say we have a very successful program somewhere, anywhere in North America to keep people from getting addicted, I'd be, oh, okay, well then let's do that. But And that's the angle I think we should be approaching this to, because it's too easy to pay off a police officer at the border. There's too many cases of people being corrupted, the system being corrupted. We need to go to the grassroots, to the individual people, to the kids, to the schools, and find a way of getting to them and giving them some other option besides sitting in front of the TV and getting stoned out of their minds. And you know, how much does it cost to incarcerate a guy? Well, everybody wants to get tough. But I'll take a wild guess, based on some knowledge in the States. 15 years ago, I heard the most expensive place was $110,000 a year to incarcerate somebody. I think it was New Hampshire. Texas had the cheapest. They were $15,000. They make everything in Texas. They grow cotton. They cut lumber. They build everything. They make their sheets. They make their uniforms. They build their barracks. So I would guess in the Northwest Territories, it costs at least $150,000, probably $200,000 a year to incarcerate somebody. So you want to get tough with somebody? I say take $200,000, go into the kindergarten, and make a program that identifies kids that are in trouble, and spend that money there. The hell with the guys who's 25 years old and can't get off it. But you make a camp somewhere north of 10 and give them some work and just make them work. I don't know what the solution is. But we've got to do some creative thinking, and we got to start getting some value for our money. And this just dumping more money in. Sure, everybody gets a little slice of the pie. But I'm going to change the topic and end on an interesting question. And I won't say anything more tonight. UNDRIP. Now, my quick read, and we didn't really get a chance to look through all this stuff, but my quick read of this statement of consistency tells me that UNDRIP isn't going to go ahead if we don't get on board with their requirements for what we need to do. Now, how many people at this table, I talk to the civilians, how many of you know what UNDRIP is about? How many of you have heard about UNDRIP? A show of hands. All right, I see about a quarter of us. I don't know about you guys. I'm sure you know all about UNDRIP.
Maybe you'll get more if you tell us what is UNDRIP. What is it?
Now, I'll give you a chance. I'm going to finish up, and then you can answer what UNDRIP is, because that's the $60,000 question driving the Northwest Territories now. Are any of you in a conflict of interest with this UNDRIP program? Is there any personal gain to be had, or does the government of the Northwest Territories get a check from the UNDRIP people? Just kind of curious.
I don't know where this falls under.
Let me just
bill. Okay,
finish.
sorry.
I have one last thing to say. If they find a gun in the guy's car, I sure as hell hope they don't give it back to him if it's an illegal car or an illegal gun. I wouldn't want to hear that.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Okay, thank you very much for your comments. We're here to discuss Bill 34 of the Trespass Act, and we'll try to stay on that topic. I think, did you have a question?
Yeah.
There's a mic right behind you.
Hi, I'm Robbie Shea. I've lived here about 2 years. Mine was more of a basic question in terms of like intent for metrics, in terms of if a bill goes ahead, fines are added. A lot of times you're just kind of going off hearsay on whether it's effective. What efforts are there in the before and after to this law? Like, if did it work? What way do we have of really measuring that, other than just word of mouth?
Okay, thank you. Just a minute. I'll just have Kieran.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So some pieces of legislation have reporting requirements. Well, they'll issue kind of an annual report over the performance of a piece of legislation. So it can be, I'm trying to think of examples, but like we established a heritage fund. So there's like reporting requirements on that have to go into either standalone reports or be part of a wraparound government report. This bill doesn't do that. It's something we could do. But there's reporting by the RCMP on crime statistics. There's reporting on charges that are laid. All that's public and in the court registry as well. So if you saw a bunch of trespass charges, right, and including their disposition, you can collate that. So you could say, after this is passed, X amount of charges go, and you could look over a 5-year period and say how much it's being used. So if we pass this and it's used 10 times each year, it's probably not getting a lot of use, and it wasn't a good investment. But if it's used, much more than that, and magnitude's greater, well, then you're seeing more. Yeah, or that too, or a spike and then down as you'd have to pull the information apart. I mean, and plus that's quantitative, it's not qualitative. So but the point is, there are mechanisms to track that we'll see, because all this is public charges. You can't charge people secretly, right? So you will be able to see how it's used over time. So I don't think we would need a reporting thing because it's reported through other statistics. But if there was something like that, we could definitely consider it as a committee or make recommendations to the government that for all the kind of anti-crime bills they're bringing forward, that they issue a report in 5 years' time, something like that. And that might be a very good idea, because you want to see a return on investment. You want to see good value for taxpayer dollars when we're rolling out any kind of legislation. And this is certainly one we want to see have impact on the streets of our communities. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Has your committee met with the RCMP members to see what their needs are or their wants are in relation to this bill?
Yeah, we had public meetings with the RCMP and Yellowknife. We get their public feedback from them, their concerns, and what they thought of the bill and what should be entrenched in it. For the time being, yes. We also express interest to other groups or peoples to give written submissions, or if they're interested in appearing in front of committee. So there's time for them to make their case in front of us. Okay, it was the superintendent of the Northwest Territories who represents all the RCMP in the Northwest Territories. But we are open to receiving consultations or feedback from any agencies within the Northwest Territories.
I have another question. I've heard several times here of the cost of putting this into place and not really understanding how the whole process works. Once this is in place, there's no ongoing cost to the government. It might be handled, like the courts will do the fining. Now, so once this legislation is placed, there's no ongoing cost, right? Because people are saying, well, we should spend the money on something else. But once this is done, I don't see where there would be an ongoing cost to the GNWT to keep it up. Am I missing something?
No, you're not missing anything. But I mean, everything has a cost, right? So if you have guys out on the streets enforcing laws, then that has a cost. But does it have like an ongoing price tag that you pay every year? No. And yeah, I mean, all government has a cost. I mean, us sitting here has a cost because we're all paid by the taxpayer, right? But that doesn't mean that we're adding more to the public debt by doing this. No. We're not proposing to spend more money with this bill. This is this changes the laws of the land. It allows more enforcement, but it is not about adding more policing resources, more court resources. It's just about changing the laws to allow more charges to be more tools in the RCMP's tool belt as it's currently written. And then, so for our process, just, what happens after this, like we go back, we're going to talk amongst ourselves, we're going to reflect on what we heard, and then we're going to propose our own changes to the bill if they're required, right? So this whole thing of, well, it's only for RCMP now. If we hear enough that which should be for more peace officers bylaw, then we can propose that change. So that's where we go next. But we can also make recommendations around resourcing that could be a cost, but it would only be based on what we hear. So if we hear Hay River needs a sheriff, we can say, hey, Hay River should have a sheriff. All communities should have more funding for peace officers. That's how our process works. Now, the minister doesn't have to listen. If you want to know more about ministers listening, you can talk to that guy over there, or not listening. But no, he's a good one. But yeah, so that's how it works at the end of the day. And then we actually vote on this after our committee process is done. So that's the next step here. But as for additional costs, like, no, we're not talking about spending money here. This is not a budget item. This is a new law on the books. Yeah. Good. Yeah.
Yeah, good point. Just a minute. Mr. McNeely?
Hey, Brandon, did you have your hand up? Okay, I'll let you go first.
Just a comment in regards to the costs associated with enforcement of this. I mean, regardless, our enforcement personnel are already responding to these calls. To get a good return on your investment, if we can curb some of these behaviors with enforcement through having proper tools, then you can then focus your efforts towards more serious issues. The costs are already happening. My time is already being invested into responding to these calls. The RCMP are already responding to these calls. And it just takes them away from more serious matters. It gives more return on investment when you can have them curb these issues and deal with the more serious issues. Just my 2 cents on the matter. Thank you.
Thank you, Brandon. Yeah, John made a comment there on prevention, and Brandon just highlighted the enforcement. We're building legislation for the enforcement, but going back to the root cause of the problem is really addressing prevention. And at the end of the day, it doesn't matter whether it's prevention or enforcement. The biggest problem we have as a territorial, and it takes an all of community approach and all of government approach, is our workforce. Our workforce is really deteriorating. People are getting older. It's a fact of life. And our younger people, unfortunately, I don't see a lot of inspiration in their advancing their skills of choice. So who's going to enforce these laws that we are making today, amongst others, to secure and build safer communities when we don't have enough enforcement officers to go around? So it's really a good dialogue, good approach, and it takes the whole community and the whole government to address this crisis that I think we are really in. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McNeely. Any further questions, comments, committee? Ms. Morgan?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. There was a question about how do we talk to the RCMP. I just wanted to flag that the meeting that we had with the superintendent, it was televised. It's on YouTube. If you want to watch it and hear for yourself what the RCMP had to say and their feedback, it's on the YouTube Legislative Assembly page. I'm sure a very popular page. But and just to flag that the RCMP, the superintendent did, we asked them, would this take more resources? Would you be asking for more officers or to be able to really enforce this act? And the superintendent said no, he didn't think so, because he said they're already responding to these calls. It would just add an additional tool. Interestingly, he said it might end up with less people having criminal records, because currently it's sort of all or nothing. Either nothing happens or they get charged with a crime, like a criminal offense, and have a criminal record. But this would allow for something in between. So I don't know how you feel about that, but that was the change that he thought that this legislation would make, not so much that there would necessarily be way more calls to the RCMP. But I'm going to leave it there. I want to spend as much time as we can hearing from you guys and getting that feedback. I don't want to go on a big speech about what my position is about this bill or try to convince you of anything. I would love to hear more from you to get your insights on what you think. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Morgan. Any other comments, questions?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just wanted to say thanks to committee for coming to Hay River, and I think you did mention it, that we do have a serious problem in this community with the drug trade. It's no hidden secret. We reluctantly are the hub of the drug trade, and it goes throughout the whole north. So things like this will help our community. It will help impact some of the trade that's happening. One of the difficult things that we deal with is housing. NWT housing with some of the residents, and we just had a drug bust the other day. Sometimes these people don't want these residents or these people in their house, and they're in some of this public housing, and this type of legislation will help get these these people out of their houses, so they can use a tool like this to help. We're doing lots. I'll just say we're doing lots to try to fight crime in Hay River. The RCMP are doing lots of work, and it's awesome. So giving them another tool, another resource is really helpful. It would be really helpful to have another sheriff in Hay River fighting for that. It would also, I'm really fighting to get a canine unit back in Hay River. It's also another struggle. So, there's lots of work being done in the background. It's not always out there, but definitely every tool to fight crime in Hay River is important. So, but thanks for coming to Hay River to hear the residents too. Thank you.
Thank you, Vince. Is there any other comments, questions, remarks? Committee, any questions, any remarks in reference to Bill 34? Okay, Mr. McNeely.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thanks, Vince, for your closing comments here. And my closing comments is Sophie just reminded me, as always, when we're going through the publication and developments of hearing from the public on drafting legislation, you can go online and provide your comments in that form as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McNeely. Just one more round. Is there any other comments from the residents here? I would like to thank you for coming out and giving us your concerns, your questions. We will take everything into consideration, and it'll be drenched into our final report. We're very serious about this Bill 34. We wanted to reflect on other bills that we are working on that will look at fighting crime, addressing the addictions. So with that, we'll, seeing no further individuals who wish to speak to Bill 34, committee would like to thank everybody who attended today's public hearing. The feedback we have received today will be carefully considered by this committee in our review of Bill 34. This concludes this evening's public hearing. Thank you again.